Good evening. We took our commercial break. This is the Council's Operation Management and Budget Committee hearings. These are our budget hearings for fiscal year 2015-2016. I will start with the introductions. And the introductions, I will start at this end. We have Councilman Kyle Anderson. To my right, to his left is Councilman David McDonald. To his left is Councilman Raul De Jesus Jr. To my immediate right is Majority Leader Alex Aponte. To my far left is Councilman Larry Deutsch. To his right, my left, is Councilwoman Cynthia Jennings. And to my immediate left is Minority Leader Joel Cruz. And with the introductions done, the floor belongs to the Department of Public Works.
Good evening. I'd like to first say thank you for having us tonight. We're hopefully going to present a budget to you that you'll accept with no changes or add money if you'd like. But we've worked very hard to present a budget that reflects the needs of the department. Next to me is our Finance and Administrative Officer, India Cicero. And behind me is Tom Baptist, Marilyn Cruz, Aponte, Constantine, and I can never pronounce his last name, that's why I'm not doing it, and Tom Baptist, and I think you know all of these folks already. Tony Matta. Did I not say Tony Matta? I'm sorry, Tony Matta.
I get you back anyway.
So anyway, we're here tonight to present our Public Works budget. It does not change significantly from what it was last year, but we have been going through a learning process and a constant improvement program, introducing more and more best practices into the Public Works Department. And the significant changes, as I would suggest, we'll follow along in the program you have up there. But the mission of Public Works is to create a safe and healthy environment through the implementation of infrastructure maintenance, enhancements of parks, roadways, traffic systems, municipal buildings, vehicles and equipment, flood control systems, and the collection of solid waste and recyclables. That's a lot of words.
A lot of words. Don't feel restrained by the PowerPoint presentation. If you want to just, whatever you want to say, this is your time.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go to the next slide. To get all that work done that we just mentioned, that is the organizational chart that is consisting of about 211 full-time staff in various divisions. As you can see, we have broken down the department into the streets division, the engineering, the waste and recycling, the architect, and then parks and golf and fiscal management as well as engineering. So it's broken down into these 6 categories. What you see on the top left is LS&I, which is a special program dealing with property cleanup throughout the city, and the executive assistant, Petrel Mailer, which is right over here, is identified as well. So there's 211 or 212 positions that are included. Now, when I first got here a year and a half ago, there were 237 positions in Public Works. This budget reflects an 11% reduction from that 237. Our ultimate goal is to have a reduction of a total of 15% to a number of 200, based upon improved methods in performance and better ways of doing our business. We're finding more and more that the more training we provide and the more opportunities we provide to our staff, the better results, and they are definitely showing in many, many areas. We still are lacking in some, but we'll get into that in a little while. Next slide. Okay, that's the breakdown. General fund is up just about 2%, and that really accounts for the raises and so forth and the steps that people had built into their employment with the city. Grants is an area that I'm not going to get heavily into. If you have any questions, certainly, hopefully someone here will be able to answer them. But we don't really get into the grant theory. That's a number that's plugged in for us. And capital improvements, there is a decrease, and that is a combination of shifting some of the CIP positions that had been funded through CIP, and now they're being funded through the operating budget, and along with the elimination of several positions that were contained within the CIP plan. Next slide. Okay, one of the things that we tried to do is identify what mandates we have and what requires us to handle these particular areas, whether it be local, state, or federal. In some cases, there's more than one entity that mandates certain functions to be done. So it's just basically a profile of what we're obligated to do with Public Works on an annual basis. Strategic initiatives certainly enhance the delivery of parks maintenance, repair and security of safely support of positive use of the parks and cemetery facilities for recreation events and casual use. Implement and maintain infrastructure improvements for parks, roadways, traffic control systems, municipal buildings, flood control to protect the safety and quality of life, and to deliver efficient services for collection of solid waste and recyclables and manage energy to provide value and protect the environment. Those are some of the initiatives that we've undertaken. I'm going to get in more detail now with progress reports. I don't know, was that handout given to the council? It was? It was not. Okay. Can we distribute it now? There is a handout that we've made up for each of you that goes into greater detail into the various areas that we work with, and we'll pass those out. What we've tried to do is identify changes that have occurred or enhancements that we continue to work on in a more detailed fashion in this handout for your review. And the first area is in the administration. One thing that was lacking in the department, which resulted several years ago in a OSHA fine being levied against the city, was the fact we didn't have our safety programs in place properly. So we've created a safety officer. An existing employee has now taken on that duty, and he's responsible for making sure that all OSHA requirements are met and all safety programs and training are in place. It's a very important position that we've created here, and it is working extremely well. We are counting on that individual in many ways to protect the employees and the city, and he's very receptive and very conscientious to what he's doing. In the area of training, which is a big area for our department, we have a number of training programs going on at the same time. One very successful program was the licensing of 11 employees getting CDLs. Now that's commercial driver's licenses. Those licenses are very valuable to the employee as well as the city. They are the licenses that provide the opportunity for our employees to operate the larger equipment, such as the snow plows, the 6-wheel dump trucks, and the 10-wheel dump trucks. So by having these 11 people get their license through our training program, we've now expanded on our ability to respond to emergencies, whether it be snow or any other emergency, with these people now licensed. So we actually have another 11 individuals that indicated they want to go through the training as well. So in all, we'll have about 22 additional CDL drivers that we didn't have in years past. And that really gives us the opportunity to use more and more of our city employees and less of the contractors. So that part of the training program is extremely successful. The Municipal Administrative Training Program is a program that I run after hours for any rank and file employee or anyone within our department that has an interest in learning more about how government operates, how to be a supervisor and a leader. It's designed to assist in the upward mobility of our employees. We found that through training, our employees are better prepared to take on the roles that open up as time goes on, but they need that type of training to be qualified to take on the higher level roles. So that's a program that runs every other week for about 2.5 hours, every other Monday afternoon, and it's no cost to the city, and no one gets any pay for it. It's all volunteer. Everyone comes in on their own time after the regular work hours to go to this program. We have anywhere from 15 to 22 attendees every other Monday afternoon. It's a program that I've done in many other communities, and I offered it to this community as well, and it's working extremely well. Then we have what's called mid and upper management supervisory training. That's 2 hours every Wednesday afternoon. Currently, there are about 38 employees involved in this 2-hour training. Just today, we had training on a mock emergency where we had a situation where we had to deal with the intersection where I-91 and 84 intersect right downtown, and our emergency was that it fully collapsed on itself. And what would we do as a public works department to assist and aid the emergency responders and deal with the challenges that we would face under such a situation. So we're going to, that's one class that we ran today. However, they've been in class since, a year and a half ago, every Wednesday, learning how to be better administrators, better leaders, better managers, and it's mandatory training, and we're going to continue that program for at least another year, probably. The 2014-15 budget, we continue to enhance our ways in which we manage this budget. Through India's staff and India's work, we know now where all of our money goes, and we know when it's going to be spent, and we know what's encumbered, and we don't like going over budget. However, as you know, this year with the snow, we did go over budget. If we had a regular snow winter, we would not have been over budget at all. We would have been in the black, actually. But we don't control the weather. We can only anticipate what's going to happen. But there are a lot of improvements that have been made in this area through finance that we did not have in place before. In facilities, that's a challenging area for the Department of Public Works right now. We have way too many buildings that are not utilized at all in some cases, or underutilized in other cases. Many of the buildings are in disrepair. We will be recommending, after a complete inventory is done on these buildings, what we feel from Public Works, what should be done with these buildings. And the buildings such as the City Hall, every time I come in, I look at the paint chipping up there, and things like that need to be corrected. But that's not the high priority at this point. It's the high priorities are keeping the building safe and operational. But we have way too many properties that we're responsible for with the staff that we have in facilities. We did improve the leadership of the facilities division this year by creating a DPW supervisor position that was filled internally with a promotion. And that individual is now working with the trades, plumbers and carpenters and electricians to get that operation up to the level it should be. We have 2 people that are in, we'll say, a floating position of overseeing the maintenance and custodial staff. We're trying to get those 2 positions permanently appointed. They've been doing the work for several years now on a temporary basis, but we really want to zero in on getting those 2 positions permanently assigned once and for all. So we're making changes. We do have in the proposed budget a new position let me just look it up real quick. What's it called? Yeah, DPW superintendent that would be working with facilities as well as streets to assist in getting their operations up to the level administratively that we feel they need to be. We have a void that has been created over the years that we want to fill, and that's being proposed in this year's coming budget that we have this new position. And we'll get more into that as we move on. Engineering-wise, as you all know, we have the Tiger project that is going on. That's $27 million in just the construction portion of the project. It has certainly created some inconveniences downtown, but it's a challenging project that our in-house staff are overseeing and controlling and managing. We're not optimistic that this project's going to be done on time. There's been a lot of complications that have set in, such as the Gold Street realignment that's pending, and that's holding up that part of the project. So we're working hard to get it done, but I didn't want you to lock into a November completion date because it just may not be totally completed at that time. Flood control, as you know, we are on a multi-year program to improve the levee system, the pumps throughout the city. The levee is critically important to the city. If it ever failed, we'd have a flooded out downtown area as well as other areas in the city. So we're on the way to repairing all that needs to be repaired. And as the paragraph indicates, there are 26 pumps contained within 6 pump stations. We have over 6 miles of levee, as well as 7.3 miles of conduit or piping through this city that deals with flood control, and it needs to be maintained. I can give you an example of one of the things that we discovered, or was discovered, was within that conduit system, there's an automobile that has been there for a number of years. We are now going out under RFQ or RFP to get that vehicle removed out of that conduit. That's how big these conduits are. They're huge underneath the city that fill up with water, but somehow a motor vehicle ended up in the conduit. So we're moving forward with that program. The roadway milling and paving, we have been on track over the last couple of years on getting achieved what we were anticipating. We did 11 miles of paving this year. We're going to do about 13 miles hopefully this coming year. And MDC continues to prepare to do a lot of paving this year, such as the remainder of Weathersfield Avenue, parts of Fairfield Avenue, parts of Garden Street are going to be done. There's a lot of cooperation between MDC and the city right now on getting these streets prepared for milling and overlay. And so once we're done with this season and through the fall season, we will have about 22 or 23 miles milled and resurfaced, which is significant for the city. That's about 10% of the streets. So we're continuing with that program on an annual basis. In the streets division, their primary functions are sweeping and leaf collection and snow removal. And snow removal certainly is the priority of this department. We continue to enhance our ability to handle the winters. Now, this last winter, was a record-breaking snowfall, record-breaking number of storms, and a record-breaking cold winter. We had no streets blocked at any time in the city. We did have many streets with excessive snowbanks where streets that have parking on both sides and two-way traffic were narrowed down in some cases to 20 feet, which does not provide adequate space for parking and two-way traffic. We had major issues with the intersections where snow was piled 6, 8, 10 feet high. It was not cleared, so the sidewalk, coming from the sidewalk into the intersection, You had to go over these snowbanks. We had many sidewalks in the city that weren't shoveled properly. We did a complete analysis and study of what took place this winter, considering we had the opportunity to work on one of the worst winters in history, and learned a lot. And we're going to hopefully pursue making some recommendations on how to improve the city's infrastructure and traffic control and so forth to avoid some of the pitfalls that we ran into this year. But from an operational standpoint, we only use contractors for the blizzard and one the following storm, and we were very successful in keeping all of our streets open, and we were running several operations where we do snow plowing, sidewalks, chemical distribution, as well as snow removal. 24 hours a day, some of these guys were working, and they did, they really did a great job. And virtually every Public Works employee had an involvement in the snow operations. Sweeping is now undergoing a change in the way we approach sweeping. In the past, it's been hit or miss. We have certainly, as most of you know, our signage where it says no parking sweeping on Tuesdays. Most of those signs you can't even read. Some of the signs said no parking on Tuesday, you go 100 feet, no parking on Wednesday. It's all messed up. So we're seriously getting into having sweeping be successful. We've divided the city into 3 sections, the red, white, and blue sections that was here years ago. We're reactivating that program. And we expect that the city will be cleaner than it has been in the past, and it'll be done in a way in which we can monitor and measure performance. Leaf collection, we instituted a new program this year where we divided the city into 3 sections again, and then divided within those 3 sections, having 2 areas, one being on the west side where the heaviest leaves are, and on the east side where the lighter leaves are, and we use different machinery depending on which side of the line we were on, we'll say. But all 3 of the areas throughout the city, whether it be the north or the central or the south, were all being cleaned simultaneously. We got virtually all the leaves up before the snow. We still think the bag program would be of great assistance as we move forward. It's much cleaner and much quicker. But a challenge for the homeowners, we'll say. So we're looking at continued improvement in the area, and our complaint ratio. I don't know what you receive for complaints on snow or leaves or sweeping, but our complaints are way down that we receive on all 3 of those areas. So to us, that's a good sign. Equipment services, it's an area that we continue to make improvements on. When I first got here, there was deficiencies in how we were handling preventative maintenance, as well as inventory of parts and inventory of motor vehicles. We are currently looking at the number of motor vehicles that the city operates. We are finding that we are way over complemented with the number of vehicles. And partially that may be due to the age of the vehicles, where we're not replacing the vehicles in a timely manner, which that will be part of what we will accomplish this year, and getting the vehicle numbers down where they belong, and basically right-size the fleet, as well as set up a more defined replacement program. Part of the problem I see in the city has been that the fleet management was centralized when I was here 13 years ago. Today, it's decentralized. The various departments have the ability to purchase vehicles whenever they like. You can't do that. It has to be under someone's control, so we're going to be recommending to the mayor that the fleet manager become much more empowered to control the future of the fleet. As far as waste and recycling goes, this is an area that has been looked at and studied extensively. We are trying to turn this into a lower cost operation, more efficient operation. We just took delivery of natural gas trash trucks, which will help over in the long run for maintenance and for environmental issues. We are really zeroing in on increasing recycling while decreasing the trash. We're paying about $64 per ton for trash, and we're making about $10 per ton on recycling. So if we can get more and more people, whether it be business or residential, to recycle and get more and more of the trash out of the stream, we will save more money, and along with helping the environment. So that's part of what the staff will be working on over the next 12 months. We have a number of programs. There was just a mattress program introduced last week up at the transfer station that should assist greatly on dealing with the, well, we collected, I believe the figure was somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 mattresses last year. Now, they're not all being generated from the city, we don't think. They seem to be showing up in places that don't even have any residential buildings around them. So I think they're being dumped, but the new legislation should help immensely on reducing that issue down. Parks and golf courses, as you know, our focus has really been on the quality of life for the people using our parks and leisure recreation. Our athletic fields are really highly used by many, many people, more than you would ever think. That's a high demand area during the spring, summer, and fall. And then you have the golf courses. Goodwin, if you are golf players, you probably are impressed, or hopefully what you encountered this year compared to last year, compared to the year before. It is really remarkable what good maintenance practices and management has done for that golf course. Keeney Golf Course is well on the way to hopefully being open this year. The front nine certainly will get opened. If the weather holds like this, the back nine will also open up, to have play this year. It's going to be one of the nicest golf courses in the area, and we're looking forward to that opening up. In the architectural area, this is the smallest division we have, 3 people. However, they but they oversee the largest amount of money. And they do an excellent job of it. And as I point out, $700 million in value is in the CIP improvement program. That's a lot of money, and it's a big responsibility for 3 individuals. But it's working, and we are actually from the Public Works CIP portion, we've developed a program where the cost is fairly level now. It's no more spiking. We have developed our 5-year plan to be consistent at about, I think, 45 to 55 million a year. And that's, I think, a good move in the right direction for you as policymakers to get a better leveling control of the dollars, so you're not doing these spikes and having to bond as much money as often. So we think we're on the right direction there. And that brings us to where you get to ask questions, I guess, now.
Thank you. First up will be Councilwoman Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. I have to say that it has been a pleasure, my pleasure, to work with the department, to chair the committee for the Public Works Department. I mean, the staff is always professional, and they always respond very quickly. I am amazed at the huge amount of work that you're expected to do and perform in that department. It is unbelievable how you continue to do more with less. One of the things, the questions I had, all right, relative to recycling, and that is, I know we have about a 28% recycling percentage. I'm not sure if it's 28%.
Marilyn handles that end of the business, so we don't want her to
So she's been injured, huh?
Actually, The data and how it's collected in the state and how we collect the data here is different. Our success rate right now, I would say, is about, if you consider the state data, is about 18%. But in actuality, and I have some data to give you here, we collect 25,000 tons a year from our residents. That's regular trash, and we recycle 5,000 tons. So, you know, the math is, here you go, suggests that just on our curbside, we have quite a significant participation rate compared to other cities. That doesn't include the e-waste, the mattresses, the leaves, the scrap metal, and other recyclable materials that we collect from either residents or the school system. So, you know, those numbers, I'd rather give you real specific data on what we collect in the city. The state would say that we collect 18% recycling. We say our data demonstrates that we collect more like 25 to 28%.
All right, thank you. And my question through you, Mr. Chair, is do we have right now any type of authority to have fast food places recycle their waste?
Yes. The state law requires businesses recycle. The municipal code requires commercial establishments to recycle. There is legislation that requires, mandates recycling.
All right, thank you. And through you again, Mr. Chair, if we double the amount of recycling through better education, how much would that save or contribute to our budget?
Well, I do have another sheet. Where's, let's see, I have another sheet of a couple of proposals that we have that are revenue generating proposals for the future year. We have a program that's starting next year. It's called Hartford Recycle More, Hartford Recicla Más, and here you go. 3 programs. One is targeted, this is a program created by our sanitation drivers who suggested this program. The program will be for small businesses and nonprofit organizations to recycle curbside. We expect that that program will divert 1,400 tons of recyclables and generate $62,000 in income to the city revenue. The second program is called the Overflow Program. It's a pay-as-you-throw program. And this is something, again, this will require some ordinance adjustments, but we did research in Public Works, and 50% of our residents in 1 through 6 families do not recycle. They place their trash in excess bags alongside their garbage carts. We're recommending that we start a program for non-recyclers, giving them a choice. They can use the blue bin that we provide for free, or we'll ask them to pay for bags for additional overflow refuse. We expect that that's a program that would require a lot of education and preparation of tenants and owners, but we expect that that could generate about save us about $55,000 a year next year, and the following year, which would be a full year, would avoid tip fees to the amount of $166,000.
All right, thank you. And through you again, Mr. Chair, what about partnering with environmental organizations that actually do go out and do outreach and training? Would that assist in increasing the percentage of recycling? And is that, I think we discussed this last year too, is this something that's a reality, a possibility or not?
I think the discussion last year focused on how do we get partners within the community who are focused on environmental promotion to participate with Public Works in doing the outreach and education. And that's something that certainly is possible. to continue to do. To provide grants, though, or hire nonprofits to do that is not possible. I think we always try to do the outreach that we can through other organizations, but that can certainly be improved.
All right, so there are no recycling grants available?
Not at this time.
Okay. What about working with the tax department, internal departments? We talked about that, putting it on tax bills and things. Has that been implemented, and working with all the departments that reach out to members of our community?
We have had a group that has been called together by Darrell Hill of all the departments involved in addressing blight in the city. And I'll let Mr. Hill comment on that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just wanted to, we were talking about the, I'm sorry, could you please repeat what I said to him? Because I had asked so many questions.
Right.
Question regarding blight in the
It's
city.
the focus is on what our agency's doing with regard to addressing waste issues.
Oh, the internal, whether or
And
not there was an
internal
internal relationship between Public Works
Agencies.
and the tax department, the finance department, departments that actually interface with Hartford residents.
Yes, there is. If I understand it correctly, the question's about blight, or is it about garbage, litter, and debris?
I think it's both.
Okay.
Because we have LS&I and we also have interagency strengthened communication to address it.
I was talking about increasing recycling.
Yes, I've convened a internal working group specifically to address garbage, litter, and debris in all of its forms, including recycling, with Public Works, the Department of Health, license and inspections, fire and police as well, so that we, going into this spring and summer, are better coordinated to identify and refer to the appropriate department for addressing whatever the issue may be. Through the winter, I think we started meeting last November. All of the departments met at least monthly, identifying what the existing policies and procedures are for their respective departments, but also looking at how we can improve them, not only for the individual department, but also collaboratively across departments, so that going forward, we'll never have a situation where, and I say never, and as I say it, I pause, so that we can reduce and hopefully eliminate the occurrence of there being garbage, litter, or debris identified by one department when it's not their responsibility, so it gets left. The simple concept, one, starts with our residents and businesses, knowing and understanding what our city laws are regarding the presentation of garbage and debris and litter, so that with better compliance from our residents and businesses, we can do a better job. It's out on the right day and it's presented properly. But when we run across an example where it's not presented properly or not out on the right day, formalizing and strengthening the process that we go through to communicate with our residents and businesses on what the proper procedure is, but addressing it so that it doesn't get left for days or weeks without being addressed by the city, assuming that there aren't health or environmental issues.
Thank you.
I may, for both council and for the department, brevity is appreciated in responses as well as questions to be direct. We are at 8:10 this evening, okay?
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
just have a few more direct questions. Okay.
There will only be a few more direct questions.
Right. No, trust me. Okay, my other question had to do with flood control. Is there any mechanism? It's going to cost us, is it $20 million a year to deal with the levee situation that we're facing? And my question is whether or not there is a mechanism put in place to help surrounding towns that benefit from those levees, to assist them in paying for it, to help us pay for those levees.
Yes, that's been discussed. There is a request going to the state legislature for their assistance on getting additional funding for the city of Hartford because the state certainly will be negatively impacted if that flood control system fails. The Metropolitan District Commission would be certainly negatively impacted because of their sewage treatment plants down in the South Meadows. The surrounding towns are impacted to certain degrees, but not as extensively as the state properties or the MDC properties. You know, if you take a town like Windsor, they're north as far as the river goes, so they're not going to benefit from or get hurt by a breach in the levee, we'll say. Weathersfield certainly has some potential, but the effort to get the region to step up to the plate is going to be pursued, but I don't think we're going to see the reality of the surrounding towns around Hartford, unless they're impacted directly, stepping up to the plate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unexpected. Councilman Aponte, followed by Councilman Deutsch.
One question for you, Mr. Chapman, and one question for Marilyn, if possible. I'll start with your question. I see that you have a massive increase in the grant funding, and this is a question I ask of every department when I see a large increase. How realistic is that possibility of getting that amount of money?
Okay.
Share the mic. It was an increase of 5 to basically 12 million shown in the budget for the grant funding. If you look in the back of your book, just to follow up on a point, there is a $19 million grant assumption in the back, with 12 million being expended in the grant detail. So
That's a lot of money.
I call council to look on page 35-8 of the budget book, and that will show the details associated with the DPW grants. So you can see the change year over year on a grant-by-grant basis.
follow-up to Councilman Aponte is I think he's asking, do we have the money in hand, or are these grants we're applying for, that type of thing?
Let's take a look. The major one here is the Colt Gateway Streetscape Phase 1.
This grant, like most of our DOT grants, is a reimbursable grant. For the Colt Gateway Phase 1, we are in final punch list for that project. However, the whole project amount of $13 million plus or minus is Phase 1 plus Phase 2. So we are completing approximately, from memory, about $5 million of that, of most of which that $5 million then can be sought in reimbursements from the state. And since we're closing up the project, we will be asking next couple of months for that reimbursement.
Budget question, because I'm going to follow up with that since we have these reimbursement issues with the school building committee all the time. Are we expecting the state to reimburse us quickly, or will they take, shall we say, longer than, or what we get with the school building committee, which is
the project is wonderfully different. There is no, the change order approval, which is the major issue that holds up reimbursement on the school building committee, occurs during the actual construction. So yes, we do expect to reimbursed by the state in a much more timely manner. We still have to submit invoices and proof of payment, and we have to go through a final audit. But normally speaking, in India, you're certainly more familiar, I would say we're reimbursed fully by DOT within 6 months? 6 months.
And then may I follow up, then the second largest one is the $2 million for the DEEP microgrid grant program. Is that money in place or expected soon? Or?
The agreement with the state is in place. We have a placeholder for it. We have received just minor reimbursement now for the amount that we've been using for consultants. At this point, the major outlays are still probably by the city 6 months out, at which point, again, the same thing will process. We'll be able to submit invoices. DEEP is another organization of the state, but they are also much more timely than the Board of Education for reimbursements.
And then for Maryland, someone came before us recently and made a claim that the large property owners are, I guess, skirting the law and not recycling. What is your opinion of that claim?
I know the resident who came before, she certainly has a valid point. She's been a real advocate of recycling in the city, and there is in fact an issue with the participation of commercial residential facilities, 7 units and above, apartment complexes and condos, property owners and owners who don't live in the community, who live far away. We have worked with the Department of Environmental Protection every year for the last 8 years, targeting buildings where residents call in and complain about the fact that property owners do not provide recycling opportunities for those who live in apartment complexes. The limitations we have is that in the Department of Public Works we have one sanitation inspector, and that certainly places a burden to consider the thousands of units and the many, many buildings that we have in the city of Hartford that we do not service as Public Works because we only service 1 through 6 family. Our responsibility is to try to get out and certainly provide information to property owners, and we've done that. We issue letters, notices, information. We try to provide technical assistance, but again, our limited staff in terms of inspection and recycling education limits what we can do.
And my last question, which is a follow-up to that, is there something we can do to provide an incentive to them, be it in the form of a carrot or preferably a stick?
I think that we probably want to focus more on the stick, and an additional inspector might help us. We have only one in the department.
All right, so I know this is not a budget question, so we'll continue talking upon that, particularly Councilwoman Jennings will come up with an ordinance to implement that stick approach.
You can also come up with whatever your suggestions are to give to Councilwoman Jennings and her committee to come up with a suggestion, something that may be workable that we can go forward with. I want to follow up just real quick on the grants section and just kind of clear up what I'm seeing is a little bit of discrepancy. In your budget presentation, you had grants in fiscal year 2015, around $3 million in the PowerPoint. I look on page 25-2, and I see $5 million revised what we've received. And then if I look at page 35-1, City of Hartford other funds, grants, fiscal year 2015 as of April 1st, 2015. And I looked at this number several times. I'm just like, that can't be correct. It's $19 million. It's Public Works. Page 35-1 says 19.1. It's in 2 different places. It's in the graft, and it's in the bottom here. Am I not reading that right? Because we have 12, I was assuming that was for 2016. That says 2015, which means there's $10 million somehow. And I'm assuming there's an explanation for this. If not, or if there are some of that money going to fiscal year 2016. And in 2016, you only have accounted for 12 million. So I'm just wondering where that 19 million one comes from.
Currently, Councilman Kennedy, I don't have an answer for you, but I'm sure we'll find it and we'll get back to you immediately on that.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Could be a
Okay, thank you. And we may have you back on that one. That's a large number. Councilman Deutsch.
I thank you. Through the chair. I was trying to think of a unifying issue that some of our citizens bring to us as council members or complain about, and a word that comes up often is enforcement of the codes and the ordinances that we already have. And who does it and how, and so let me give you some examples. And then I think you can answer these fairly easily. Let's say that you have a bus stop and you have individuals who have to climb over a snowbank, maybe handicapped and can't get at a bus stop or something. We know it's the individual businesses, I think, that are supposed to clear the bus stop and the sidewalk, unless I'm mistaken. So who would you say is supposed to enforce that, since it's apparently not something Public Works can always do in a snow situation? So that's enforcement, let's say, of that clearance. Another thing is streets paving after there's reconstruction work. So it's my understanding, going back years when I kept asking this question, is let's say there's a round a manhole at the corner of Asylum and Elizabeth, which is down about 1.5 inches from the new asphalt, and there's a square one at Pleasant and Windsor Street, a square one which also, again, hasn't been leveled, and it's my understanding that someone, whether DPW or the Corporation Counsel's office, is supposed to say to the utilities, when the street is paved with another level of asphalt, the utility is responsible for leveling it up. Otherwise, the cars
Councilman, we've had a whole lot of buildup. What is the question? I'd like a specific question to the department. I'm not trying to cut you off.
I understand that. So
But
let me give the
we've had a
examples, and then
whole
we'll get the
story built up
answer.
to the question.
Because, well, then we'll get the question. When there are school construction defects, let's say in construction, and a pipe that can rust is used other than the specified stainless steel, let's say this is the case in Hartford Public High. These things have come up. The question exactly who is responsible for recognizing these situations, sometimes dangerous or quality, and making sure that the proper party pays for it. And again, I've gone through in the predecessor of the current Corporation Counsel office. The question is, do we need a lawsuit? Do we need someone in DPW or Corp Counsel simply to say to the responsible party, fix it, without a whole lot of to-do? Because again, some of these things have persisted. So the question, the first question is, exactly who is responsible in those instances for a quick response to fix a situation which is needs correction?
Please.
Okay, if I may just say that you've talked about a number of situations.
That's right.
Each of them probably have different entities that do the enforcement. For an example, in a building, it has to meet building code. So building inspection would be responsible, as well as the contractor that's doing the work on the building and an engineer that may be overseeing that work. If it's in the road, and let's just say it's a manhole that's depressed, that would fall under DPW. It is an issue that we have made very clear that we're not going to tolerate anymore. When we're done paving a road, or they're done paving a road, the road is to be smooth without built-in potholes. That was made very clear to both our milling and our paving contractors this year, as well as MDC. The problem we have is some of the other utilities are not fast to respond, and so we have now put them on notice that if they do not raise their structures properly, we will pave over them, and then they can come out and dig them up again, infrared them, and readjust them. We'd prefer they do it before. If they don't want to do it that way, they're going to have to do it after, and they will be taken to task if it's not done.
Okay, so through you, in other words, to have this done promptly so you don't have vehicular damage or injuries from falls, what can we do about an efficient mechanism that gets the city its money or fixes the problem, because in a couple of cases I've given, it's been months, if not years. And, you know, as much as I jump up and down and complain, nothing has changed. So this is an a budget question, because we may be liable for some of these issues. So how can we speed up the process for the sake of saving the city some money?
Well, again, I think the test will be this summer and this fall when we're doing the paving. I would ask you to go out in your own. If you find that there's not smooth pavement and no potholes built in because of structures, I want you to call me.
But through you, I've done that. I mean, I don't mind doing it, and council members and citizens don't mind doing it. But I guess the question is, how can either DPW or L&I go right efficiently either to Corp Council or to the administrator, so the thing is, it doesn't drag on with all the complaints that our citizens give us. You see what I'm saying? I don't mind, we don't mind doing it, but to call and then it's not an efficient surveillance mechanism, you see?
The only thing I would say is the key to this is not having the problem develop. Once it develops, then it's a money issue. That doesn't fix the problem. It's got to be done as the work is getting accomplished, and that's what we intend to make sure happens on all the street paving this year and in the future. We have another plan we're working on that the utility company's working with the city. If we get this plan in place, we will eliminate trenches virtually throughout this whole city over time, because we will not have breakage. Once a street is paved, everything underneath that street should be upgraded before it's paved. So once it's done, it should be good for 15 or 20 years and not have any potholes, not have any trenches. That's a plan we're currently working on. And I've met with the utility companies on a preliminary basis to talk about the concept. We will continue to do that. It's not a simple task. It's very complicated, but I think there's an answer.
Okay, thank you. So through you, so I raise it, no one yet has mentioned, at least that I've heard, some of the big players in the situation, whether it be school contractors or the MDC or Eversource or CLP, whatever it's called now, CNG and so on. And we hear, or let's say, don't we hear that some of them do a good job? I mean, colloquially, I hear CNG is pretty good at doing that leveling, whereas, I don't know, MDC doesn't. I'm giving an example. So we're trying to solve the problem. It is a budgetary issue, so we don't have to go through this time and again. So I'd appreciate it either if you can give us an order of magnitude of what can be saved by getting on top of these contractors and utilities, so we don't have to do it or report it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me if I may interrupt for a second. Regarding your question, Councilman Kennedy, about the $19 million in page 35-1 for grants for DPW, and how that compares to the $12 million that was reported. What you're seeing on
Actually, no, it's the $5 million that was reported in that fiscal year. You have $3 million that was in the adopted budget. The actual is $5 million. You reported receiving grants up to April 1 of this year, which is still this current fiscal year, of the 19-1.
What I can say about that is on page 35-1, where you're seeing the $19,100,000, that's the amount of grants that were awarded. Grants, unlike the general fund, have multi-year lifespans. So you can be awarded $19 million for grants that last multiple years. But what you look at in the details is the current year amount associated with that grant.
That's fine. A budget question, could you break down the 19-1 in terms of what was awarded, what fiscal year it's used to be spent?
I can do that.
That way we can try to follow it and compare that to the current budget. Councilman Joel Cruz.
Thank you. Through the chair, good evening. My question is, my first questions, they're all really from page 25-3, 25-4, and then 25-5. And these questions are, I'm trying to compare the general fund revenues. For example, if you look at 25-3 under engineering, you are budgeting or recommending 1.5. However, last year we had $2,451,790 million general fund revenue for this exact same program or services. Then on street services, so when we calculate this, we're engineering, we're at $946,127 less compared to last year's budget. On street services, we are $16,823 less. On parks, we're $5,000 less from last year's budget. And all that comes out to about $933,550 that almost looks like this department is not generating compared to our fiscal year 2015. Although we do see on waste and recycling a $34,400 increase, it still comes out to $933,550 as less revenue for this department. Can that be explained?
In our current budget, our recommended budget, we have a number that is a change here from the grant, the federal grants that we get for the highway. We get an annual amount, normally about $1,205,000. This year, we're expected to get $122,520, and that is one of the differences with our highway grant. So we can look into why that's been reduced. That is one of the changes. Also, with some of the revenue that has decreased within our department, there's some programmatic changes we've made to some of our fields and doing some construction that has taken some properties offline where we're not able to charge certain revenues, and we're actually changing some of the programs we're providing. So although the revenue will decrease this year, we are anticipating increased revenue in the future with some of the changes in our parks infrastructure.
My last question is on 25-1, the reason for the increase is contractual salary increases. So we know that this is not creating extra positions or additional positions to the department. Could you share with me whether through this funding, are we addressing, I know this is almost a question that should be no, because we know that DPW doesn't get the funding it needs to function to the quality of life that we, that citizens require. But based on this funding, do we know other areas that we can look at and say, shifting money from one place to another to make sure that that area is taken care of?
I think what you have in front of you is a budget that has been massaged last year with some tweaking done this year. It just may sound odd, but I don't believe that we're underfunded in any area at this stage. We are consciously and aggressively changing the way we do business to hold the line on spending and get a quality product done and on time that has not been the case in the past. So as far as the level of funding goes throughout the department, we're pretty comfortable with the level of funding. As far as the lack of funding, I don't believe that we're underfunding or under budgeting for the amount of work that we are faced with. The key that is essential for us to move forward and control costs is through training. There is no question in our mind that as our employees become more proficient in what they do, they will do it faster and less expensive at a much more professional level. So at this stage of the game, I think that we're where we're supposed to be, and as I indicated in the opening remarks, we're at a level of 211 staff members. My goal is to reduce that down as we go forward, provided we get our people professionally trained and have them understand what's expected of them with the bar raised pretty high, and it's actually working very well in the areas that we've already implemented, and we continue to implement it in other areas.
So to be clear, if extra funding was available, there are no areas that DPW could have good use of that.
Again, you know, I know that many may say, oh yes, we need money if it's available. I'm not saying that. We can utilize the funds that we have efficiently, and you know, I'll compare it to the level of manpower. We were overstaffed in previous years. We get more done today with less people than we've ever got done before. This department had over 500 people years ago. We're down to 200, and we're still making improvements. And the parks have never looked better. The snow plowing has never been better. The trash and recycling collection has never been better. We're changing the way in which we operate. We're modernizing what we do. We're buying the right equipment for the right purpose now. We're training our people. We have high expectations. Every person knows now what's expected of them. Some people have found out the hard way. But no, I can honestly say if you offered us another $250,000, I would say give it to somebody else that needs it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'll endeavor to be brief. But first, I want to start by thanking Mr. Chapman and your staff and congratulate you on the phenomenal work you've been doing to reorganize and resuscitate the DPW and to get it to where it is today. It's been a tremendous improvement since I've been on council, and I just really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Couple of questions. On your comments regarding Councilman Deutsch's question regarding the utility trenches and all that work that goes on our roads, you made a comment that if it's not addressed by the utility company that you have someone repave over that?
Yeah, we put the utility companies pretty much on notice that we're changing the way they operate as well.
And so then do you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you bill the utility company for the paving?
I'm sorry?
When we pave that situation, do you bill the utility company for that work?
No, we expect them to do that. We're going to hold them to the fire now to make sure that their trenches and their manholes and their utility frames are adjusted properly and repaired properly. I will admit that historically the city's been pretty lax on that. I will say that what we have discovered this year as a new complication is that we're beginning to realize that the base materials of some of the roadways in the city either are failing or were never put in properly in the first place years and years ago. Some of the streets that we recently repaved are not holding up to the level they should be. So we're going to start doing some core borings to see what is consisting of the base materials and the pavement that's already there. You know, if you take the situation on Park Street as a perfect example, Park Street was not done that long ago, but it's a mess. And we think we have figured out what caused that problem there, and it's going to be remedied. But we're beginning to realize that some of the streets in the city, not so much the main roads, because they were built differently than the side streets, but a lot of the side streets we're finding were never built properly with the proper materials at the proper depth and the proper drainage. So we may get into a reconstruction aspect rather than just a mill and pave program, because there's no point in throwing good money after bad. So in some cases, we may end up ripping up roads entirely to do them right.
So do you have the staff to track all of these different trenches and work that's going on from utilities and various companies?
Every trench that's on our streets right now all had pulled permits years ago and recently. The ones that are recent are tracked and we hold the utilities accountable. But there's a time frame involved there, and the city, unfortunately, years ago had let that slide, so many of the trenches that should have been repaired properly never got repaired properly, and now we own them, so we have to take care of fixing them. But that's not going to be the future, I can tell you that. We're not going to accept that from any utility company.
Okay, and if I may ask, what's your leverage on the utility companies to get them to do the work?
What's what?
The leverage you have over the utility
Well,
companies to
the
get them to do the
leverage
work?
is that they can't touch our streets without getting permits. And if they are in violation and they have failed to perform their work, then we're not going to issue permits.
Okay.
Now, that may be some major legal battles in the future, but if that's what it has to
Well,
be.
so
But
be
we
it,
don't
right?
anticipate that to be the case. I
Yeah.
think the utility companies have the same problem that we've had in the past. Too much, or a lack of oversight, I guess would be the right term. I think that they recognize as well that they need to improve in the way they operate as well.
All right, thank you. A couple of recycling questions. It's my understanding that with our contract with their waste disposal company, I don't know if it's CRRA anymore, I think they changed, so. But isn't there a cap on how much we can receive for the recycling?
The contract reads that it is up to $10, but that is evaluated every year as part of MIRA's budget process. So the $10 is the cap, but they can pay anything up to that depending on their budget issues.
Is there any cap on the amount of tonnage that we can recycle?
Not at all.
No, not at all. Okay, good. So this leads me to another kind of following up on Councilman Cruz's question. So what do we need to get better enforcement of our commercial and multi-unit dwelling recycling?
It's complicated because we have a large number of multi-dwelling buildings. And it's not just the city of Hartford, but it's also a DEP concern. We have many property owners of these larger scale apartments who are outside of the state, and it's a very difficult enforcement issue. I think we also I think we should consider doing a tag team with the state and focusing on that. I know the commissioner is very interested in doing that.
Do you think we need a change in state legislation, state statute?
Again, it goes to the issue of where resources have been placed and enforcement has not been, you know, the focus of resource allocation on a state or local level.
I also, on recycling, I just want to say that these concepts you handed out are excellent, and I really would love to see them before the council as soon as possible. I think it's very good for us to figure out a way to help the smaller businesses and nonprofits to figure out how to recycle more, and for us to generate some revenue out of that. That's ideal. And then as far as this, the people, the residents who are not recycling, we need to give them a carrot and an incentive to do that. And I think that plan you have before you is really good. So I would look forward to seeing that in ordinance form.
Well, I want to compliment the staff of the Sanitation Division. This is what Keith has talked about in terms of providing training at no cost. This is supervisors training staff, empowering staff to think about what they can do to improve the service they provide. So I want to compliment our sanitation drivers in particular who've come up with these concepts.
I would concur. I think that To me, that's the way you get change to happen, is you have to empower your staff. They're on the ground, they see this stuff every day, they know what's going on, they know how things can be improved. So, great ideas, thank you. One last question. Regarding streets, milling and paving, you have a schedule of streets for the upcoming fiscal year?
Yes, that's, yeah, we can provide that.
Could you
to
provide that to us? Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions, but what I'll do, I'll make you a deal. I'll ask all the questions to be Public Works, but I won't ask any questions to Mr. Boone. Deal? Give him a pass. Some of my questions...
Yeah, I'm gonna hold you to that.
All right. Deal. Some of my questions have been answered. Don't want to be repetitive, but let me start by saying I have a couple questions that are budget related, but a couple questions kind of observation and questions and just operational stuff. First of all, let me commend Mr. Chapman on the training that you're putting together. With this training, is there any kind of employee evaluation forms that supervisors sit down and go through with training?
Well, actually, we're just introducing evaluation forms for a particular group as a pilot, we'll say.
Yes.
You know, we have a great staff. We just have some deficiencies in understanding the modern techniques. But overall, the transition has been wonderful with the staff that we have. And as far as evaluations go, I don't know if we're going to go that direction on a permanent, long-term basis, but it's something certainly that's on the choices or the platter, we'll say, the menu.
I'd like to commend the department on the fact that you're training you be able to upgrade and enhance people's career by being there, looking at mobility. My other statement was in reference to there was a meeting that was held for the sports fields, and I just want to give recommendation to the COO and Tom Baptist. It was the first meeting that was held in people's history being involved in using fields. They were able to convene users of the field and have them work out their own differences, and I thought that was a great strategy. I stayed to be a facilitator, but I wasn't needed. But they were able to work out their differences because of the limitation with the field's availability. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, I think in that case, information is valuable. I don't think anybody really understood the scope of the situation until it was brought forth and explained to everybody, and it did work out well.
And the participants want to do it again.
Right.
So they want to keep communication going on all levels. So that was a great thing. Snowbanks, I want to circle back to what Councilman Deutsch talked about a little bit, because I didn't hear your response to the snowbanks that were over 7-8 feet tall, and also, I'm sorry, let me backtrack, the non-compliance of individuals, businesses, and homeowners that don't shovel their walkways. Who do we call? The police department for enforcement, or who do we call?
Well, the enforcement is done by the police department. The Public Works does not enforce ordinances dealing with snow removal. But there's a bigger issue, and that is that the snow banks that are on the road, if they're on the road, they're our responsibility.
Right.
The trouble is they're half on the road and half on the sidewalk. So it becomes a shared responsibility. But my concern this year in particular with the amount of snow that was on the side of the road and the intersections and the snow banks at those intersections is that we can't afford to do again or experience again what we experienced this year. We were very fortunate that people didn't get killed going in and out of driveways where sidewalks weren't shoveled.
Right.
You know, you get to a corner and then you couldn't get over it, and it's not an obligation of the property owner at the intersection to clean the intersection. So part of the responsibility is ours, but we don't have the mechanisms in place or the equipment or the manpower in place to clean every intersection in the city. But we are we anticipate that a study committee is going to be developed very soon that are going to take these challenges and study them and make recommendations on how to avoid these situations in the future. The sidewalk issue is significant. You know, some of the school days that were closed were as a result because the sidewalks weren't shoveled.
Right.
There are other days they were closed because of the parking ban. You know, we can't continue to have school closed because of those types of issues. So we have a lot of challenges with winter snow in Hartford. And this may be the record-breaking year, but that doesn't mean next year is not going to be worse.
That's right.
So we've got to be prepared to move forward with proper plans, and that's what we intend to do.
And then I spoke to a couple of the DPW workers, and they kind of give me a little heads up this was coming. The recycling information, we're looking forward to see it in committee. That's all I'll say on that, because it's been talked about numerous times, but really excited that that's coming forward. Like to see that go online very soon. More revenue is what we need. And then let's go to the book. The detailed, now my numbers are wrong. It'll probably be 40, I'm looking at page 42 in my book, and maybe 43 for you guys. But I'm looking at just a couple questions, 311009, 535-064, snow plowing and removal. I'm sorry. Yes, snow plowing and removal. You got 71,482 for this year. You don't anticipate nothing happening next year in that line item?
Okay, those are payments that were made to contractors.
Yes.
We're not using contractors anymore.
Because of advanced training.
That's our plan. You know, I can tell you briefly that we did an analysis over the last 5 years of how we performed our work. And this year we had 21 storms. We had 76 inches of snow. We spent $888,000 just on overtime and contractors. Of that $888,000, only $110,000 was spent on contractors. Now, if we go back in 2012-13, several years ago, we had almost the identical amount of snow. We spent almost the identical amount of money for contractors and overtime. However, the overtime or the contractor expenditure 3 years ago was $420,000, where this year was $110,000. What our objective is to increase the income of the people that are working for our department.
Awesome.
And reduce down the need for contractors.
That's why
now,
morale's high.
If we have a blizzard again next year, we're probably going to need the contractors. But you'll see in your capital improvement plan that we are buying or proposing to buy equipment that will augment our existing fleet and reduce down that need for contractors. So our goal is to eliminate contractors, though I don't want them to know that, because then when we need them, they won't come. But no, they understand what we're trying to do here. But
they're not watching Channel 5 anyway. They're not from Hartford. No.
But we do want our employees to be the breadwinners when overtime comes.
I just have two more quick questions. Under page 41, maybe 40 in your book, 311007, 510109, bonus payments. You have $1,200 for this year, nothing for next year. And can you explain what bonus payments are? Did you get that? I know you have a little, did you hear me? With that motorcycle going?
Okay, let me see. Where are we?
Yeah. I can use my coaching voice if you need me to.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. We'll have to get back to you.
And then also, too, there was mention about, and this is my last question, Mr. Chairman, and I'm good for the night. I'm silent. I'm going to stay firm to my word. With the Promise Zone in the north end of Hartford, will that help looking at any kind of federal funds for recycling, you think?
I don't have all the details on that, exactly what's going to be included. We need to be briefed on that, actually, so we haven't got that briefing yet.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilman And I believe we are reaching the final point. I have a couple of questions, and I'm going to try to make them real. This is seasonal workers. Where do we stand with seasonal workers? I understand last year we had slotted, what was it, either 21 positions for that. We had 500, 800 applicants. What happened with that process?
The seasonal program was found to be a challenge that this department could not address properly. So we found the seasonal people that we had on board a year and a half ago when I got here. We had, I believe, 27 seasonal that were not seasonal. They were here for a year or more, which makes them not seasonal. And they were called seasonal, and they didn't get benefits, they didn't get pension contributions, they got nothing. And that's not fair. Of those 27 seasonal, 21 of those seasonal were picked up as permanent employees. I believe at least half of those seasonals that were picked up got their CDLs this year. These 21 people, or whatever it was, 20 or 21 people, they're the future of this department, and we made sure they understood that. So the bar is raised extremely high for those seasonal, but in the future, there is no plans to hire seasonal again. It's just too cumbersome. It consumes too much of our staff time, and the results are not what we expect.
And most of the seasonals, though, those are generally Hartford workers, Hartford residents?
I believe all of the seasonal that we brought on are Hartford residents.
And obviously, that's a decision for the department. In terms of the entry positions, it does raise a concern, because since some of those were, which the plan always was a transition, obviously that wasn't happening, so that we could actually, for Hartford residents. So, I mean, I do have some concern with respect if the program is in fact ending. How does that affect your entry-level positions?
I'm sorry.
Without the seasonals, how does it impact?
Okay, it doesn't, simply because the productivity of having that 25 or 30 seasonal people did not complement the operations in a measurable way. Now, let me just say for clarification, however, if we had a specific project that the council, the mayor, whoever, wanted to achieve during a summer or during a winter for 90 days, that's where a seasonal group would be very beneficial, but not in the day-to-day operations of this department. They're not, they're new, they're untrained, unskilled. By the time they get up to speed, their time is up. And we don't, it doesn't make, it's not, if you did a cost-benefit analysis, you would never do it if you were running a business. But I am in agreement that there are certain opportunities, if they're ever presented, where we could say, look, we want to bring in 12 seasonals to put them into Keeney Park and to clean this area of all debris, leaves, whatever, but it would be very restrained on time, and we need proper supervision.
Understood. With respect to your vacant positions and openings for your entry level, and let me speak up, I've never been told I speak softly, but, no, I mean, but with entry-level positions in Hartford residents, the concern has always been that the seasonals were the transition. So I understand in terms of limiting it, but again, my question goes back to the Hartford residency. I mean, with entry-level positions, do we have any, I mean, what are your numbers have been for the people that you have hired? And I have a concern that may take away from some of the jobs that we're going to Hartford residents. That's my concern.
I will say that in my tenure, since I've been here, we've hired 2 new people. One was a civil engineer 3, and the other was a heavy equipment mechanic. That is it. We haven't hired any entry-level positions at all. I have absolutely no reservations in saying that, if we have a resident of Hartford that is qualified for the job, we certainly would grab them. But in these two positions that we just, not just filled, but have filled, we didn't have Hartford residents applying because they're highly technical, and I guess the market here in Hartford could not generate a civil engineer 3 that wanted the job. So we ended up hiring someone, I don't know where they live, a fairly young, new engineer to fill that position. And the mechanic, again, I don't remember where he lives. He could actually, I don't know if he lives in Hartford or not, but you know, I know that is a high priority for the city, and certainly, you know, we will accommodate whenever possible, but we do need to fill positions with the people that apply.
My next question goes toward the athletic fields we've recently built. The city spent those dollars to get those fields built. Received a complaint again last week about who's using the field. Have we come up with any way to try to detract folks? This specific time was Sunday from 7:30 to on. Apparently league soccer playing. None of those kids looked like they were from Hartford. I got people actually called me up about that. So I need to figure out, and we need to figure out, if we're going to make that type of expenditure, and we're about to build 2 more, how we get these to be used primarily for the folks they're intended to be used for, which is Hartford residents.
Well, for the first time, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm Tom Baptist, we now go out on weekends and have a staff person go to every game and ask for the individuals who are playing to show their permits. And the case that you're referring to, I'm aware of. It was a rugby match at Quirk School, and that person, or that group, it was actually more than one team involved, actually contacted our office and asked for a permit, but failed to provide any of the information we gave them about the application and fees and so on. And they went ahead and played anyway. And they left the field a mess, too. So we're aware of the problem. It's an enforcement problem. And for the first time, we're actively taking steps to make sure that only permitted users are on the fields. One last thing. We have no ability to enforce that ordinance in our field use policy. The ordinance requires permitted use only. We depend upon the police department for that. And our standard operating procedure is that if we ever encounter a belligerent party on any one of our athletic fields, we call the police. We hope that they come. In the past, when we've done that, they've not come for one reason or another. But I've discussed that with the leadership of the force, who assures us that when we call, they will go. So I think that relationship is on track and a positive one.
When you were referring to that the ordinance was no way to enforce it, you meant in terms of removing people from the field.
As far as DP, we don't have the authority to do that.
No, understood. I just want to make sure that was a removal issue, not some kind of other issue in terms of how we set it up to be used.
Correct. Yes, it's strictly a removal.
And I know about the rugby game myself. No, this was this past weekend. I actually had somebody grab me about, I guess, a soccer type of thing that went from pretty much Sunday morning, 7:30, on to 7 in the evening is what I was told. And again, that was the same issue that was brought up. The rugby and the soccer are separate incidents. The complaints both coming from members of the community in the Clay section part of the city.
You know, it's an enforcement concern, and it's one that we take seriously and have actually implemented measures to address.
All right, and I mean, maybe we can talk about the permit stuff offline, who's granting it and what processes they go through. Again, because I know we're going to build 2 more, so I want to make sure we get it right when we do get those facilities built. No further questions. Thank you very much. I know you waited a long time. Thank you for the work that you do. We know it's not easy work, particularly with the snowstorm this past year. Good work was done. No question about that, because the snow piles themselves got to be very high. But I think it was probably worse 2 years ago than it was worse this time out. And we probably had more snow this time out. So that was,
Let me just say that it is very important for everyone in this city to understand that the Public Works Department is only as good as the team of Public Works. And we're building a heck of a good team, and there's pride now that hadn't been there for a long time. So we're going to continue to try to do what we think is best for the city, and we certainly appreciate your support in doing so.
and thank you all for coming again this evening. We're not going to take a break. We're going to go right into Hartford Parking Authority. Thank you all for coming. I know this is a late evening for you all. Again, it's greatly appreciated from those of you coming from the Department of Public Works.
Thanks.